Most altcoins are still down 80 to 90% from their all-time high. That is not the case with Monero though. XMR printed a new all-time high just under $800 in January 2026, then pulled back to roughly $410 today with a market cap around $7.5 billion. While other coins depended on venture funding, marketing budgets, and exchange campaigns, Monero kept running with nothing but code, miners, and a stubborn community. The token is up 50% since the low in February, but I see plenty of dry powder left, and in this video we will see what price Monero could reach until the end of 2026, based on math, not just speculation. If you like macro-driven price breakdowns, subscribe to the channel and let's dive into Monero. This is not financial advice, always do your own research. Monero launched in 2014 and has already been through multiple full cycles. From early single-digit prices, it ran to an all-time high near $470 in January 2018, then crashed with the rest of the market, bottomed out at around the $30 range in 2020, and spent years, and I mean years, of grinding before this latest breakout. In late 2025, XMR started a new leg higher, and in early January 2026, it finally broke the old 2018 peak, spiking into a new all-time high around $797, as privacy coins generally became the hot topic. In February, it dumped hard, surely, but today it's up 50% since that low. Overall, since the all-time high, the total correction is about 65% and the price around $410 with a market cap in the mid 7 billion range. That puts Monero far from minus 90% dead altcoin territory. And in terms of dominance, XMR sits near 0.28% of total crypto market cap today, down from low single-digit percentages at the peak almost a decade ago. Which, the way I see it, leaves plenty of room if privacy rotates back into favor. Checking under the hood, Monero's economics are straightforward, pretty straightforward. There was no ICO, pre-mine, or token sale. Coins were distributed entirely through proof-of-work mining with an initial emission to roughly 18.4 million XMR before a permanent tail emission of 0.6 XMR per block kicked in. Today, supply grows slowly from that fixed reward, which keeps inflation under 1% and trending lower over time while continuously paying miners to secure the network, of course. Monero uses the RandomX proof-of-work algorithm, which is optimized for CPUs and intentionally unfriendly to ASICs, which makes mining more accessible and helps decentralize hash power. And unlike most blockchains, guys, all transactions are private, by default that is. Sender, receiver, and amount are obscured at the protocol level, which is exactly why regulators dislike it and why privacy-focused users keep coming back, of course. Before we talk upside, however, we need to be honest about one contentious aspect. That is the regulatory access. The EU's MiCA framework and similar rules elsewhere push regulated exchanges away from privacy coins, and several major platforms have already delisted or heavily restricted XMR in Europe and other regions. Each delisting cuts centralized liquidity and pushes more volume to smaller offshore venues and peer-to-peer markets as well, which could work actually for hardcore users, sure, but limits the mainstream access. At the same time, I need to point your attention at this. That pressure hasn't killed Monero. If anything, in fact, the more governments talk about surveillance and CBDCs and all of this dystopian thing, the stronger the narrative becomes for a chain that never stopped prioritizing privacy. Now let's see what the charts are telling us. On the weekly time frame, Monero is still in a broader uptrend with a strong impulse into the January 2026 all-time high around $790 and a sharp but normal 50% pullback since. That kind of retracement after a fresh all-time high is aggressive but not unusual for a high beta alt in a already volatile market. On the daily chart, XMR is trading above its 200-day moving average, using it as dynamic support. Actually, last summer we saw similar price action as now. Price trades for a short period below the 200 daily moving average, then reclaims it and starts making higher highs. It's just about the same now. Price was below that moving average, and right now it has reclaimed and tested. So XMR seems ready for the new higher highs. The first target for me is the 618 Fibonacci, which comes at exactly $600. If we reclaim that zone, a new all-time high is very probable. Another thing we should point is that the XMR against Bitcoin chart shows that Monero is outperforming Bitcoin for 2 years straight. But if price loses the 200-day moving average, we might see a consolidation for XMR down to the 2026 lows at $280. To be fair, I don't see it going any lower than that. Now, to see the big picture, because Monero will not move on its own forever, guys. Rather, it needs some macro catalysts. In the 2020 or 2021 cycle, the sequence was straightforward. It was massive QE, rates at zero, PMI in expansion, and risk assets going vertical. In 2026, under the new Fed chair Walsh, the order of signals will matter even more. For this cycle, the first green light will be real money printing. And I mean actual balance sheet expansion from the Fed, not just ending the quantitative tightening. Until you see the central bank's balance sheet turning back up in a persistent way, altcoins will find it hard to go up for long, even if PMI is sitting slightly above 50. The second condition is PMI. I just glanced at it. And that is PMI making higher highs and staying in expansion territory. That tells you the business cycle is improving instead of rolling over, which historically lines up with stronger performance for risk assets, including crypto, of course. If we get both renewed QE plus rising PMI, in a realistic bull case, the total crypto market cap moves from current levels to around $6 trillion by the end of the year, slightly above the last peak. But I want to be transparent with you here. If we never get QE and PMI starts slipping instead, then the bullish scenarios we're about to discuss become less likely and the downside path becomes more important, more prevalent, if you like. But here comes the fun part. Let's see how high Monero can go based on simple math. We'll base the math on a $6 trillion market cap, that is total for the whole crypto market, and Monero's market dominance as the key variable. I remind you that the dominance currently is at 0.28%, but the highest it has ever been is 2% in 2017, way back then. Additionally, for all the calculations, we'll use a price of $410 per XMR and roughly 18.5 million coins in circulation. Let's check out the most basic scenario, the one of stability. In it, Monero's dominance, aka our key variable, climbs to and stabilizes at 1%. A clear move up from today, but still below its old peak. 1% of 6 trillion gives Monero a $60 billion market cap. And with about 18.5 million coins, that points to a price of roughly $3,200, that is per one token, of course, by the end of 2026. Yep, not bad, but wait for the expansion scenario and let's see how this looks then. In this more aggressive bullish case, Monero becomes the clear winner of the privacy trade. Total crypto is still at 6 trillion, but Monero's dominance reaches 1.5%, below the 2% area it touched in the past, yet a big jump from today's level. 1.5% of $6 trillion gives us a $90 billion market cap. On roughly 18.5 million coins, that is around $4,900 per XMR, and I love the way it sounds. But we need to hedge our predictions with a contraction scenario as well, where we get no QE and the structure actually breaks. In the downside case, the Fed never restarts real QE. Liquidity stays tight, Bitcoin continues trading below its 200-day moving average, and risk assets roll over. In such an environment, Monero could break below the low 300s support and slide back into earlier consolidation levels, giving back a big, and I mean a big part of the 2025-2026 move up. That wouldn't kill it per se, and it wouldn't kill the long-term Monero story, but anyone buying at current prices would have to sit through heavy drawdowns and wait much longer for the next clean uptrend. Now, I want to tell you how I approach this whole Monero situation from a trading perspective. Right now, XMR is already trading above its 200-day moving average, which is a good sign for the chart on its own. But I'm still not buying it. For me, Monero only becomes a real trade when three bigger conditions line up. One, Bitcoin has to reclaim and actually hold above its own 200-day moving average. Because when Bitcoin is below that line, most altcoin moves, just let's face it, fade. Two, the Fed has to clearly announce quantitative easing again. In other words, Kevin Walsh needs to get busy with that printer. And finally, three, PMI has to sit above 50 and start making higher highs, showing the business cycle is actually improving and not rolling over. When those three are in place, that's when I start getting aggressive. At that point, my plan is as follows. Buy the first chunk of Monero once we have the money printing announcement and Bitcoin is back above its 200-day moving average. Then I'll make another entry after XMR confirms strength with actual clean move above a major resistance zone on the daily chart, that is. When it comes to profit taking, let's see. I keep it simple, guys, and tied to the levels we talked about previously. Number one, I sell 30% of the position around the previous all-time high near $800. Then later on, I sell another 50%, yep, half of it, in the zone of my stability scenario around $3.2 to $3.3 thousand. And ultimately, I'll let the last 20% ride toward the expansion scenario zone near $4,900, with a trailing stop, of course, so I don't give everything back on a big reversal. If we move into contraction scenario, however, that is, we never get proper money printing, Bitcoin stays under its 200-day moving average, or Monero loses its own 200-day and the low 300s support, I am not forcing the trade then. Nah, forget about it. I'd rather stay patient and actually wait for the right mix of macro and chart signals than just go and buy because the story sounds good. How many times have we seen great narratives in the past and not materializing actually? So I don't want to make that mistake. Well, ultimately, Monero has survived delistings, negative headlines, and years of being called too risky or too niche. And it still managed to print fresh all-time highs earlier this year. Whether it becomes one of the key assets of this decade or stays a specialist tool, ignoring it entirely is probably a mistake. So pick one of the three scenarios I gave you. Tweak them if you have to, but don't sleep on the opportunity. Now, tell me what your XMR price target for the end of 2026 is, and also let me know in the comments below, are you already in, waiting for a better entry, or staying out completely? If this breakdown helped you guys, hit the like button, subscribe to the airdrops.com channel for more price prediction videos, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.